1 in 3 LGBT people voted Republican in the last election. That is not some small minority. And the group of people who maybe don't fit into that box but disagree with the cult ideology is way more than that.
I know this is a challenge for you, but I really need you to continue to try to make your point. So far, you're 0 for 2 on the
Such a nasty woman.
on your points that did you just call me a nasty woman?
He did.
Oh,
He did.
Jesus Christ.
That's a good point, Mike. Can you flesh out what you mean by that? I know that you said that it meets all the criteria, this type of thing, but for the purpose of the audience and for Polly, who wants to really understand what your position is, maybe you can flesh out what you mean by that.
Sure. Damn, I wish I wrote them down or something. But off the top of my head, there are different cult prevention leagues that list the warning signs of a cult. Amongst them are lack of critical thinking, fear of persecution, loss in sense of humor is one. Status of exalted enlightenment. The group is always right. Fear of outsiders, vilifying dissidents, anyone who's part of the group that disobeys them, for example, instilling fear in its followers, that the group is the only means of knowing truth.
Okay. All right.
Fear of
Okay.
outsiders, fear of persecution.
We're gonna have to take this at least one at a time because I can't answer all of these at once.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So let's start with one, and then we can let Polly respond. So let's kind of go down the list. What's the first one that you're that you would say is an indication that it's a cult, Mike?
I think the biggest one is probably no capacity for questions or inquiry or independent thought.
Okay. So, um, do you think that in deciding or in coming to terms with your own sexuality, your own sexual orientation, and realizing that you were a gay man, do you feel like you were forced to think outside the box a little bit?
In what way?
Well, society in general, I hope you would agree, tends to be, cis heteronormative, right? So if if a Norman is out there in the world, meets somebody, they sort of many of them in the back of their mind just assume that they're just cis and straight, right? We live
I
in a
mean, I
cis
think
straight
that's
society.
natural when they're 95% of the population. That's to be
Okay,
expected.
sure. Well, whether or not it's natural is immaterial. It just exists. That's the case, right? So it's weird that an entire group of people who, because of their very nature, is outside the like you said 95% of people. In order to come to terms with who you are, you have to be pretty willing to think for yourself, right?
Mm. I mean, I didn't know when I came out that I was expected to be pledging an entire loyalty oath to an entire ideology, belief system, political party.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say if you wanted to make a cult, it seems like LGBT people would be the absolute worst because in order to even recognize you're LGBT, you have to be willing to think for yourself and not necessarily think what everybody else thinks about you. Like there's no shot I would have ever came to terms with my own identity if I didn't think independently and fervently so. And I'm not alone.
Sure, but I think you kind of had the luxury of, I mean, I don't want to say, I don't know when you came out or transition or anything, but I'll say myself too. I think we kind of, in some ways, though things are obviously better off now in many ways, I think we kind of had the luxury of it being more individual back then. Back then, the LGBT community had a much more live and let live attitude, and there really is just nothing left in that community that is live and let live.
Okay, so
It's live as long as you live and think and say exactly what I tell you to.
okay, so let me tell you the reality of how it was back then is is that there were n there were very little visible trans people at all, right? Like, there was nobody out there telling me it was okay to be who I am. It's been it's been a bit of a sea change since then. We still have a long way to go, right? Most people probably in the chat might be misgendering me. They might be like saying, like, I doubt they believe trans women are women. But the fact that there is at least some glimpse of visibility is helps many people, including kids, come to terms with who they are, and that is, you know, that allows them, to like live better lives. It doesn't turn them into cult members. It allows them to be themselves. Like your view is so backwards.
How is that backwards? And you say that there were no visible people out there. What kinds of visible people are we talking about? Because for me, a lot of gay people like to bemoan the fact, oh, when I was a kid, I never saw gay people on TV. For me, the problem was I did. And it's always this horrible. And like I mentioned, GLAAD makes sure that we see exactly what they want us to see. They're in every single writer's room, and that's why we're getting the same caricatures that we've had for year after year after year. And there are so many
Wait a second.
LGBT people who
Hold
don't fit
on.
into these boxes
Okay.
that the alphabet industry is trying to force us into.
Okay. This is the first. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell you from the trans perspective here, and I feel like this is at least somewhat translatable, but this is the first time in my lifetime, very recently, very recently, that not every single joke that had to do with trans people was not just the basic "lol, look, there's a guy in a dress" sort of shit. Like, haha, we like yuck it up right now. Dave Chappelle shows that those jokes still fly, right? But that's all that we've had for a long time. It's only now where gay jokes, trans jokes, lesbian jokes, bi jokes, there's actually good humor in that area. It's not all just like dumbass oppressive humor. And that's good, right?
What did Dave Chappelle say that you take such issue with?
Uh I mean, can we finish the cult thing first?
We'll
Because I
come
feel
back to
like
that. What did he say that you take such issue with?
uh, can we stay on topic?
Did you
I mean,
watch the special?
I know you want to pivot here,
Yeah,
okay?
I do think it's fair that we at least flesh out the rest of the cult topic as Polly requests. Let's see if we can
Because you
flesh
don't
that
know what
out a
you're
little
pissed
bit
off
more.
about. In fact, I don't want to hear about what jokes Dave Chappelle said, because he talked about a very real thing, that the LGBT establishment is so vicious and so cult-like that his friend, who is a trans woman, committed suicide. And there's no introspection done. There is no reflection, nothing. Because, again, go back to the cult, the group is always right. The group is the only means of knowing truth. The group hates outsiders and dissidents.
Look, I'm gonna take issue with your characterization of how this, the reasons behind a single person commits suicide. I think you know as well as I do that people who commit suicide have typically long-standing issues, not like 3 or 4 day issues. Now, I'm not saying that attack on the internet is good and helps people's mental health. No, it may have been bad. It may have even been the last straw. But just to like blame the trans community for like somebody's suicide says that Dave Chappelle is being very disingenuous. And two, you relying on that as your basically one of your main talking points shows to me you have no argument.
Oh, I've got lots of arguments.
Well, okay, you have no good arguments.
Totally.
It seems like you're projecting, my dude. It seems like you should not be debating anything about what Dave Chappelle has said or laid claim to. Can we go back now to the cult?
Yeah, I would. I was actually going to suggest maybe we can get back to the hypothesis that Mike has of an LGBTQ cult. Sure, I would like to see that fleshed out more. I know that the audience has been asking for that too. So if you could do that, and maybe we can move back into that arena, Mike, that'd be great.
If you want to go to one of the points with it, a dramatic loss in sense of humor is one.
Well, I mean, she doesn't think trans women are women.
But what does that mean even at this point? Like, these words have been devalued to mean nothing.
Can we... I know this is a challenge for you, but I really need you to continue to try to make your point. So far, you're 0 for 2 on the
Such a nasty woman.
on your points that Did you just call me a nasty word? Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
All right. So
Okay.
Maintain bearing
like I
Andrew.
said, you're batting 0 for 2. I want you to like just keep one thought in your head. The LGBT cult. People in the chat want to know your arguments too. Okay, so like J.K. Rowling, we could talk about why she's a TERF, right? But I don't.
It's not.
Okay, all right, I don't. Anyway, your example for somebody who is not a TERF is Dave Chappelle. So you're sus there. Give me an argument for with support, hopefully this time, as to why the LGBT is a cult.
As I've listed the warning signs of a cult, tell me how it is not any of these.
Just pick one. Don't dish gallop me. Pick one.
How about dissidents being vilified as traitors?
Okay. Dissidents being vilified as traitors.
LGBT, 1 in 3 LGBT people voted Republican in the last election. That is not some small minority. And the group of people who maybe don't fit into that box but disagree with the cult ideology is way more than that. So we know at minimum it's about 1 in 3 LGBT Americans. That is not some minuscule minority.
Okay, so what do dissidents say from the, LGBT hegemonic majority, the powerful people? What do they say that causes them to be vilified? Just give me an example, or just tell me what they generally say that gets shouted down.
Anything, literally anything. I'll give you one example. There was a 21-year-old gay kid named Wilson Gavin who committed suicide, again, just like Daphne Dorman before him, because he was so vilified by these alphabet people because his crime was saying drag queens are not for kids, and he was against drag queen story time.
Okay,
so it's literally you disagree with them once, and you will see their true colors.
Okay, so I feel like what you're trying to do here is you're trying to say that that there are certain people who disagree with the general approach by the LGBT community, for example, to like regain some semblance of equality or to further our civil rights, right? But there's other people like you, for example, right? You for example, who wants to tell us who choose to fight, maybe even audibly and maybe even offensively to people, that we're wrong, right? And then we say, no, you're wrong. That's called that's not cultish behavior. That's actually discussion. There's lots of pick-me's in the community like you.
Oh, who do we want to be picked? I know that's your new buzzword, and again, another sign of a cult that the group has its own jargon and terminology, and you just showed another one of them. Who do we want to be picked by? It's so important to me. Wine moms, please like me. I mean, I do love my MAGA wine moms, but
are you? I mean, you understand that like there are traitors to communities, right? Particularly marginalized communities. Those people exist, don't you think? Or no such thing.
I think that it's sure 1 or 2, whatever. I'm not interested because that's just what the ideology loves to vilify anyone with. So you think that at minimum 1 in 3 LGBT Americans are traitors?
Wait, I never said that. Wait.
Well, 1 in 3 LGBT. Well, that's what the entire LGBT media only exists to smear other LGBT people who don't vote Democrat, who aren't leftists. And I'm telling you, it's 1 in 3. So you literally think 1 in 3 LGBT Americans are traitors and just hate themselves. And
I can tell you this: no cult exists with where a third of their group is dissenting. So even your own argument in favor of a cult causes your argument that it's a cult to fail.
Are you kidding? Of course. How about Scientology? People disappear and leave that in droves. Probably twice or 3 times as many people as used to be Scientologists are now. And that's exactly what is happening with the alphabet establishment. People are leaving that shit in droves.
Wait a second. You don't stop being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender when you vote Republican.
Thank you. But that's not what the LGBT media and groups will tell you. They spend their entire every minute of every day instilling fear in people that if you don't vote Democrat, because it's all a slush fund, it's all, they're in bed financially with the Democratic Party, follow the money. I give you so many examples that they just instill fear in people to do exactly what they say.
And yet a third somehow doesn't fall for it, huh? What a cult! What a cult! A third doesn't fall for, or still votes their own conscience because, keep trying.
Wait, now we're voting our own conscience? I thought it was just to be picked and gain acceptance from the MAGA wine moms.
Well,
but I'm glad you admit that it's our conscience.
Well, a third of our community isn't pick-me's. I don't think that's true. I think you're a pick-me.
Who do I want to be picked by?
I don't know. You love the far right. I mean, that's cool. Hey, whatever. Whatever, dog.
You're right. I have the jarring of the far right.
But anyway, okay. So,
right.
So if it's a cult, it's a pretty ineffective cult.
How do I love the far right? What is the far right?
I mean, the far right loves people from the LGBT community to shit on the
far right loves LGBT people.
Oh, dog, you didn't even let me finish the sentence. That kind of shows you're desperate. The far right loves when people from the LGBT community, or really, let's just face it, any marginalized community, are willing to shit on that community from which they come because it gives them license to ignore their rightful demands for civil rights.
What you decide is rightful. Again, another warning sign of a cult. The group is the only means of knowing truth, and you're proving that.
Well, okay, wait, hold on a second now.
That's what the far right is. The far right is people who love LGBT people that take issues with the LGBT establishment. That's the far right.
Wait, what?